You know, sometimes you just get a really good feeling about a product when you hold it in your hands for the first time. And that's the vibe I got when unboxing this silent mini PC. It's difficult to cool minis with this size even with a fan, and plenty of units are either running hot or allowed AF. But it's much more difficult to do with passive cooling, and in the budget segment no less. Well, Minix comes to the rescue and destroys the preconceived notion that fanless minis are inferior in performance with one seriously impressive piece of kit. And we're going to go over it after this message. Are you looking for a way to safely and quickly transfer files and apps to a new PC? Well, say hello to Ease Us To Do PC Trans, a simple to use app that can help you transfer programs from one PC to another or create a full backup of your computer. Try it for free with a link in the video description. We've looked at a bunch of budget fanless minis over the years, and they all suffer from high temps, poor performance, or both. But the Minix Z100-0dB shows how it's done. Is it perfect? No. But it really raises the bar for fanless budget minis everywhere. You may have noticed the external antennas on it. That's because the Z100-0dB is completely made out of metal on the outside. It's my dream come true. Super solid and feels very premium. Also good as a shot put when you don't have one around. But more importantly, it helps to dissipate the heat from the CPU much better than plastic ever could. Fanless minis can also be aesthetically challenged. Not the Minix though. It's a mostly black box with a nice tinge of red and blue across it. Simple and effective. Sure looks good to me. Fanless minis usually cost more than actively cooled units because of the extra materials used to keep them from melting to pieces. Copper, aluminium, steel, etc. aren't cheap compared to just plonking in a fan on a small heatsink with no copper. Right, Asus? Still, I think the price of $239 US is reasonable for what you get and is around the fanless competition. Double the RAM and storage is available for $276, and both these options are available on the official website or Amazon US. My unit came with a power supply with multiple region adapters, HDMI cord, 2 antennas, a reusable cable tie, monitor mount, screws, and the user guide. This mini PC shakes things up by having the ports on the sides instead of the front and back. On the left side is a microSD card slot. Always a nice addition. I do like my slots. Also included is a USB-C and dual USB 3. All of them are 10 gigabit. Finally, we have an audio jack and power button. On the front, there's a reset hole. I do like my The right side has a barrel jack connector which supports 12 to 19 volts. There's also dual USB 2, Realtek Gaming 2.5 gigabit LAN, and dual HDMI for up to 4K 60Hz. Intel Wi-Fi 6 AX201 handles Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. On the back of the Z100, you can screw on the provided antennas for excellent wireless reception. If you want to upgrade or change components, it's real easy with this mini. Just remove the 4 screws, lift the lid, and oh, let's pretend that thermal pad is still in one piece. It's still good, it's still good. Okay, so there's a single DDR4 3200 stick since the N100 only supports single channel memory, a Gen 3 NVMe drive with a heatsink on it, an M.2 Wi-Fi card, and the CMOS battery. Everything you need access to right here. The Z100-0dB comes pre-installed with, say it with me, Windows 11 Pro. That's right. Ubuntu worked fine from the USB drive when I tested it as well. Other Linux distros should work fine. Alright, let's hit the benchmarks. The Z100 out of the box beats the other fanless mini PCs. Minix contacted me later in the review that I could push single core performance further by enabling C-states. And if you've read up on Intel C-states and what it does, you'll be as surprised as I am that it actually made a difference to performance. A whopping 16% increase. Well, I learned something new. I didn't ask why C-states isn't enabled by default, but it should be, and I'll show you how to set it in the BIOS section of the video. With C-state on, it matches the best N100 minis out there and is far ahead of the fanless competition. In multi-core, the Minix is unmatched out of the box against the silent wonders. It beat all of them even when they had their power limit increased, which is really impressive. And as with most N100 minis, The power limit is set lower than the maximum on the Z100 and can be increased in the BIOS. I use 30 watts since I know that's the best I'll get out of it. Again, instructions in the BIOS section. With the new power limit, the Z100 matches most of the top actively cooled mini PCs and gains an extra 14%. Impressive. This extra performance is not free. It does increase CPU temp and power draw, which we'll look at later. In video encoding, only the quieter 4C with a higher power limit managed to beat the Minix at its out-of-box experience. And again, with the power limit upped, the Z100 hangs around the top units with a 17% performance improvement. All the top performing N100s use DDR5, but the difference between DDR4 and 5 for the N100 isn't as big as people might think. A few percent in the graphics benchmark at best. So it's no surprise the Minix Z100 is lower down the stack. If we compare it against the best result, it's 5% behind in DX11 and 2% in DX12. Of course, that being said, having DDR5 would have been nice, but no fanless mini has so far for whatever reason. Probably cost. The included NVMe drive isn't the fastest for read and writes, but at this low end, I think even SATA SSDs are fine. Super fast sequential read and write speeds aren't useful for most users. Okay, I had a request to check out how Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament 2004 hold up on Intel's N100. I'm running the Minix at the higher power limit. Quake 3 Arena comfortably holds above 200 FPS. You can lower the detail and effects for an FPS boost since we're maxed out. Also maxed out settings with Unreal Tournament 2004. The frame rate can drop to the high 60s. These tests show the lowest FPS you'll experience at 1080p. Reduce some details and effects for more triple-digit frame per second goodness. I still get asked about GTA 5, so here it is on the Minix. It's playable at 720p, but runs too slow at 1080. What else can Intel's N100 do? Well, it's good for day-to-day computing, 4K 60 video playback, emulation up to the PS2, GameCube era at 720p, light 1080p video editing, and photo editing. Some will also use it for a pfSense box and other uses. The Z100-0dB has an idle power draw of 8 watts, which is on the lower end, and matches the quieter 4C. Max power draw depends on the power limit, but is also on the lower end. A big change when upping the power limit is the maximum CPU temperature. It goes up by 10 degrees Celsius during the half-hour load test. You might have already seen in the game tests that if the Z100-0dB isn't under load constantly, the temps are much lower even with the power limit increased. That's because the max temp of a passively cooled mini PC depends much more on how it's used, as it takes longer for the heat to dissipate passively off the case. Obviously, a bigger heatsink wouldn't have hurt, but would have also increased the cost of the Mini. The Minix Z100 manages to keep the NVMe drive temp under control thanks to its heatsink. It's definitely not going to thermal throttle at these temps. And of course, the Z100 is fanless, so it's silent. The only noise you'll hear is whatever ambient noise surrounds you. I'm including this data in case you'd like to compare the noise from the actively cooled minis. Okay, time to look at the BIOS options for this one. Let's start with how to enable C-State for the better single-core performance. This is a tweak everyone might as well do straight up. Mash the delete key when you power on the Mini and go to the Advanced tab. Press Ctrl and F1 at the same time to bring up the Advanced BIOS menu. Head to Power and Performance, CPU Power Management Control, C-States, and enable it. You can save and exit, or if you want to up the power limit with the increased CPU temperature drawback in mind, head to View Configure Turbo Options, enable PL1 Override. Set it to 30,000. For the time window, I set it to the default figure of 28. If you leave this at 0, nothing will happen. Next, set power limit 2 to 30,000. Then you can save and exit. This forces the N100 to draw as much power as it can handle. Also, this Mini supports Wake on LAN and other features, which you can see right here. Alright, let's summarize. The Minix Z100-0dB is a fanless mini PC, and since that's not common, it gets a big tick. CPU performance is good out of the box, but with the power limit increased and C-state enabled, you're looking at something that matches the best actively cooled mini PCs out there, which I didn't expect to see anytime soon. It features an all-metal case, the first I've reviewed with an Intel N100 inside. Beautiful. So it has antennas to get a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signal. The port selection is pretty impressive. There's an SD card reader and 5 USB ports, with one of them being USB-C. CPU temp will be high if you increase the power limit and constantly thrash it. In that case, I recommend using it at its default. There's no storage expansion apart from the micro SD card, which is probably why we have more USB ports. It's a balancing act, but worth pointing out. And I think C-state should have been enabled in the BIOS. The Minix Z100-0dB is by far the best budget fanless mini PC I've tested, and can even perform like the best actively cooled units out there. That is really impressive. Even though I'm constantly reviewing new minis, I don't have any issue recommending this one right now. Well done, Minix. The bar for budget fanless mini PCs has been raised. Now I'm very happy about it. Links for this mini are in the video description if you're interested. The only thing that would make me even happier is if this one was rocking the Intel N100 CPU and had a DisplayPort instead of a second HDMI. But everyone has different preferences when it comes to the port selection, so yeah. In fact, I'm sure I'll get someone in the comments wishing it had dual LAN jacks. In that case, why not check out the top performing actively cooled N100 mini PC, the Beelink EQ12 Pro, right here, which does have them. Cheers!